How's everyone doing today? It's your boy JJ Domination, and here we are with the best, my favorite NFC 2020 free agency signings. You'll see the title of the video, man. We did one about the AFC and my favorite signings from that. If you guys want to know the criteria, let me go ahead and break it down to you like this. So when it comes to picking the best or my favorite free agency signings per conference, it cannot include players that you re-signed. It cannot include players that you franchise tagged, and it cannot include players you acquired via trade. It has to require a player you signed from one team that actually hit the free agent market to come to your team. Some teams aren't going to have any. Some teams may have one, but the most that I am allowing myself to do is 2 of them. So we'll see how this goes. I just finished up my NFC list not too long ago. It only took a little bit of research. I had to write down all of the major signings and then kind of pick from that group because I don't want to forget any particular person, per team. Maybe there's someone out there I didn't write down that I didn't think of because I didn't research hard enough for it. So let's just go ahead and get started with the Chicago Bears. When it comes to the Chicago Bears, they did make a few moves. I'll be honest, I disliked a lot of their moves. But there is one player that they're bringing from another team to this team that I actually like, and that's going to be cornerback Artie Burns from the Pittsburgh Steelers. With Prince Amukamara basically off this team, I think taking a flyer on Artie Burns, who's like a 5th-year corner in the league, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. I mean, Chicago last year took a flyer on Buster Skrine, however you pronounce his name, and he really wasn't that bad. He wasn't great, but he wasn't terrible, you know what I'm saying? But with no Prince Amukamara here for the Chicago Bears, it's basically going to be Kyle Fuller, Buster Skrine, and Artie Burns. But I think taking a flyer on Artie Burns may be a good move. They'll probably benefit from it. Taking a 1-year deal, I don't know the salary for his contract. I imagine it can't be no more than $5 million, probably less than that. I wasn't able to find that number. But I think it's pretty good for Chicago to take a 1-year flyer on a pretty young corner. I think he's like 25 years old. To be honest, good move, Chicago. Outside of that, I haven't really been that big of a fan of your offseason. And now we're here with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and really, if you look at their offseason, they've made one big move, and yes, I'm a fan of it, so let's just go ahead and get it out of the way. Tom Brady to the New England Patriots. Tom frickin' Brady is going to be a New England Patriot. He's going to be playing with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, that young up-and-coming defense with Todd Bowles. This is a signing I dedicated a whole video to. I don't really think I need to go into big detail about the video. Just know that I really like the signing, and I think it could work out for both sides, Tampa Bay and New England. Brady said he wants to play until he's 45. This contract, a 2-year, $50 million deal, where it's all guaranteed, it's going to allow him to play until he's 45. So he set a goal, and he's going to reach it, and who knows, man, maybe if he's feeling great at the age of 45, he might exceed it. Good stuff for Tampa Bay, and all of a sudden, that NFC South is looking pretty lethal, as you'll hear later on throughout the video. Moving on to the Arizona Cardinals, they did make a few signings. I didn't really dislike any of their signings, I guess you could say. Maybe some won't grow on me as much when I have to do the inverse of this video. But one signing I really liked in particular was the Arizona Cardinals acquiring Devondre Campbell via free agency, coming over from the Atlanta Falcons on, again, a 1-year prove-it deal, basically. A 1-year $6 million contract. To me, good deal for a pretty solid linebacker. He's nothing special, but he's a good enough athlete. He can play the position, and there's a demand for linebackers in certain schemes. And I think in Vance Joseph's scheme, I think there's definitely a demand for a guy like Devondre Campbell. We'll see how he fits in. We'll see what role he's going to be given, because we know they run a 3-4, and we know they signed a guy like Jordan Hicks last offseason. Will he play next to Jordan Hicks? How will they use Hassan Reddick, who is a versatile chess piece in their defense that really doesn't have a defined role? A lot of questions, and hopefully we can get that answered. Obviously we will, assuming coronavirus doesn't take over the NFL season as well. But hey, man, I got to give it to the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously the big move that they made, the number one move you could talk about, is acquiring DeAndre Hopkins for nothing. But again, we're doing my favorite free agency signings. That was a trade, and it wasn't like they brought him back to the team or anything. It's not like they re-signed him, and it's not like it was a contract extension, which I don't talk about those in this video. It's strictly free agents coming over. I like what Arizona's done so far. And now we're here with the Dallas Cowboys. And if you think about it, they've done a lot of housekeeping. They tagged Dak Prescott. They gave Amari Cooper $100 million. They extended Blake Jarwin, brought back Sean Lee, brought back Anthony Brown. They've only made 3 outside moves with like any relevancy. And I guess if I had to pick one, you see, it's tough because I like Gerald McCoy, but a 3-year deal is just too rich for me. Maurice Kennedy, I don't know what kind of role he's going to have on this defense. If he does get to play, I think that'll be awesome because with the Ravens, he was decent. They let him go. And then with the Jets, he was decent. And I'll be honest, man, I'm not really a fan of HaHa Clinton-Dix these days, man. He's been on 4 different teams in 3 years, and he continues to get these 1-year prove-it deals. And Bears fans, Chicago Bear fans last year tried to tell me HaHa Clinton-Dix was better than Adrian Amos on some salty shit when we all knew that wasn't the case. Anybody with a functioning brain that knows football knew that that was not the case, and it was proven throughout the season. HaHa Clinton-Dix had 1 good game against the Washington Redskins and wasn't on shit the rest of the year. So to be honest, I've spent a lot of time on the Cowboys, but hey Cowboys, I got nothing for you. And right here, we got the Philadelphia Eagles, whose offseason I have been a huge fan of. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about the 2 signings that I really like for them. Honestly, I like every signing they've made. Like, without even trying to fanboy them or anything, I really do. I mean, Howie Roseman is a great general manager, and they just seem to do the right thing. I mean, they just turn all negative situations into a positive when it comes off-season time. But for the Eagles, man, the 2 moves that I really like the most, my favorites, getting defensive tackle Javon Hargraves, 3 years, $39 million. We'll go ahead and show you what Javon Hargraves is looking like, at least in Madden, so you have a visual of that. But Javon Hargrave, just a young player. He's entering his 5th season, 3 years, $39 million. He's 26 years old. This will allow him to try to get a 3rd contract in the NFL. And then another player that they got that I was really a fan of, what position does he play? He's a linebacker. Is he on this team? What's his... There he is, Jatavius Brown. There he is. Jatavius Brown getting a 1-year prove-it deal. No idea what the salary is. I wasn't able to find it. But taking a flyer on an athletic linebacker like that and bringing in Javon Hargrave, which you knew was going to cost a big chunk because he just came off a great year, and being able to move around some cap space, make it work, decline the option on Malcolm Jenkins. I mean, you did a lot of good. Is it Malcolm Jenkins and Michael Jenkins? I always mix those players up. Malcolm Jenkins. Okay. So, yeah, to me, the Eagles, they had a really good offseason. I like the fact they took a flyer on Jatavius Brown. Jatavius Brown, there we go. And I like the fact that they brought in a young DT to play next to Fletcher Cox. I think it's going to be very intriguing. And then if you look at the Atlanta Falcons, man, to me, listen, I'm just going to say it. The Falcons entered this offseason, I wouldn't say with the worst cap situation, but one of the worst cap situations outside of Minnesota and Pittsburgh. And what they've done this offseason is incredible. They've had one of the best off seasons, period, in the NFL this year. And listen, we're going to talk about it. They made 2 moves. They brought in 2 different free agents, and we're going to go ahead and talk about them. So let's just go ahead and let's talk about the first one, and that's Dante Fowler Jr., who, of course, is going to slide down to defensive end in this 4-3 scheme. 3 years, $48 million. I don't think it's an overpay. Last year had a career year, 11.5 sacks. I think he can match that, if not exceed it, in Atlanta. He's going to be playing under his college coach, Dan Quinn. Good for Atlanta. You know, I was one of the ones saying they probably should have looked to fire Dan Quinn. They kept him. They finished the year strong, and he definitely earned a lot more respect from me finishing the season strong. They could have easily tanked. He could have easily, you know, lost his job basically because he was forced to tank by the organization after being on the hot seat. But he didn't. You know, they went out there, they won some games. They have a solid draft pick, 16 overall, and I think they're in a good position to take defense again. And then they took running running back Todd Gurley for a 1-year prove-it deal after he got cut by the Rams. A 1-year, $6 million deal. I think it's like $5 million that can go up to $6 million. But I mean, those are both like at least A moves, you know, A plus quality moves, because Todd Gurley 1-year prove it. Worst thing that happens, he's a shell of himself, and you only commit it to him for 1 year. With Dante Fowler, he just came off a career year. He's still very young. He's playing with his college coach, who knows him very well. I just think the thing that's funny about Dante Fowler was Falcons fans were trying to tell me he's going to take a pay cut. $16 million a year, yeah, that's one hell of a pay cut. I mean, that's almost premium pass rush money. That's like $3 million per year away from premium pass rush money. I thought discount would mean he's coming for like $10 million a year, but okay. As for the 49ers, they made 2 like moves via free agency that's re-signing some guys. I got nothing for you. As for the Giants, they made some moves. They brought back some of their own players. They brought in new players, but Giants, I got nothing for you. And here we are with the Detroit Lions. Am I going to be a big hater on the Detroit Lions like people seem to think I am? Kind of like how people think I'm a Bears hater and a Vikings hater and all this other stuff. Am I going to be a big hater on the Detroit Lions? No, because they have 2 signings that I actually like. You see, I don't hate the Lions. We'll start off with defensive tackle Danny Shelton coming over from the Patriots, a former Patriot, just a cheap run stuffer, man. 2 years, $8 million to fill in the cog that Snacks Harrison has left. Listen, man, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the Danny Shelton signing. Just he's still young. It's for 2 years, a low-end run stuffer. That's a valuable move that they were able to make. So I really like that move. And then finally, I don't know if he's a strong safety or free safety, so bear with me. But we have safety Jaron Kearse coming over on a 1-year, $2.75 million deal. He's versatile. They play him as like at least in the Vikings defense, they played him as like a big nickel corner or a dime safety. Like, they threw a lot of different looks out there with this guy. Just very versatile. They could probably... they'd have to ask him to put on weight. I was about to say they could convert him to linebacker, but he'd probably have to put on some weight. They'd probably make him put on at least like 10, 15 pounds to move to linebacker. But he's just a very intriguing player. And listen, we know the Lions run the Patriots' defensive scheme, which is a hybrid, and they want players that offer versatility and offer a variety of packages and sub-packages. So I give Detroit credit. They actually managed to make 2 signings that I liked. And to be honest, when I wrote all these names down, I was like, okay, I really don't like any of them. But then when I wrote down Danny Shelton and Jaron Kearse as the last 2, I was like, you know what? I really like those signings. So good job, Detroit. I'm not a biased Packer fan. And when it comes to my Green Bay Packers, we've only really made 2 moves that require us bringing in new players. And you know what? I didn't know how to feel about them early. I kind of liked them early, and then I kind of didn't. But I got to say, it's grown on me seeing how we've structured the contracts and all of that. I like both of these moves, so I'll go ahead and talk about them. Number 1, bringing in right tackle Rick Wagner. I mean, yes, he's a downgrade from Brian Bulaga, no question. And he's only like a year, maybe 2 years younger than Bulaga. But number 1, you got him for virtually nothing. Number 2, Detroit has to pay more for him this year than Green Bay will. Green Bay this year is only paying $4.8 million for Rick Wagner this year, and the Lions are paying $5.8 million. So the Lions are paying the Packers for him to play. Or the Lions are paying Rick Wagner to play on the Packers. There you go. That's what I meant to say. And then the other signing that we've made, I don't know if he's a middle linebacker or outside linebacker in this scheme, but Christian Kirksey. You know, he's been hurt the last couple of years, but when he's on the field, he's a good player. And I think for this scheme, he's going to be just fine. And he used to play with Mike Pettin in 2014. he played with Mike Pettin, you know, when he was the head coach in that defense, so there is a sense of familiarity. And his contract's a 2-year, $13 million deal, but I think the cap hit this year is like a $5 million cap hit, or like $6. I can't remember exactly, but it's not really a whole lot. So really, the more that I think about the moves that my Packers have made, the more I like them. I just wish we'd go get a damn receiver, something, shit. And talking about those Carolina Panthers, man, this NFC South is going to be very interesting. That's all I got to say. There is one signing that they made that I actually like, and it's quarterback Teddy Bridgewater. I do like the 3-year, $63 million contract for 3 years. I think it's the perfect contract length. I think it's a good salary for Teddy. I figured he'd get around $20 million. He did. So I like it. It's pretty much the contract that I would project for Teddy Bridgewater, which would have been 3 years, $60 million, but he gets 3 years, $63. And I was telling some of my friends, don't be surprised if he goes to Carolina. He used to play with Joe Brady. Joe Brady's now the new offensive coordinator in Carolina, and they'll probably look for a quarterback who can at least play now, who is familiar with the scheme, while they draft a guy, nurture him, and get him prepared and ready to play in the scheme. So yeah, to me, like, the writing was on the wall for him to go to the Panthers. I heard the Bucs were interested, and I was like, I don't see him being a fit with Bruce Arians. I heard about him to the Chargers, and I was like, okay, that's one that I can kind of buy. But nowhere made sense except, to me, A, re-signing with the Saints, B, going to Carolina, or C, long shot, but going to the Chargers. So to me, the first place that I would have him going that wasn't New Orleans would have been Carolina, and that's where he goes. So Panthers, good job. You get yourself a bridge quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater. As for the Los Angeles Rams, I got to be honest, they were kind of cap-strapped as well. They only made one signing that I liked. They've only made a couple, but a couple of those involved them keeping their own players. But they've only made a few that I've liked so far. And that is going to be bringing in Bears pass rusher Leonard Floyd, 1 year, $10 million contract, basically a 1 year prove-it deal with the Rams, and I think he's going to have an awesome season. The sack production hasn't quite been there like you would expect it to be with Leonard Floyd. You know, he's been really good against the run. The pass rush hasn't been there like you would want it to be for a guy like him coming out of Georgia. But I feel like playing next to Aaron Donald, that's going to change. And that's going to change pretty soon, because he's going to be the newest addition to this defense, and a defense that also cut Clay Matthews. So now you have Samson Ebukam and Leonard Floyd rushing the edge. And now we are here with the Washington Redskins. They've made some pretty decent moves. You know, I give them credit where credit's due. But the one move that I really like that really sticks out to me is bringing in cornerback Kendall Fuller from the Kansas City Chiefs. You know, the Chiefs right now, they're kind of in cap space hell at the moment. They got to extend Patrick Mahomes coming up. Kendall Fuller is 24 going on 25. They gave him a 4-year, $40 million contract. Listen, I just saw the Cincinnati Bengals hand out a 3-year, $42 million contract to Trey Waynes. Okay, I've seen the Giants hand out a 3-year, $45 million contract to James Bradbury. There's this stigma that Kendall Fuller can only play in the nickel. I think that's false. I think he thrives as a slot corner, but if you needed him to play outside, he could. And that's kind of how I view the situation. What's funny is Kendall Fuller used to be on the Redskins, but was a part of the trade to acquire Alex Smith, and now he's going back to the Redskins. So I think it's fair to say, in theory, the Washington Redskins won the trade, right? Well, the quarterback broke a leg, and, well, Kendall Fuller's back. But I thought the Redskins made some solid signings, but this was the one that I really liked, so that's the one we're going to go with. For the New Orleans Saints, they did a lot of housekeeping, extending Daniel Onyemata at defensive tackle, bringing back Drew Brees, re-signing Andres Pete. They did make two signings, but the one that I really liked the most is wide receiver Emmanuel Sanders from the San Francisco 49ers. Emmanuel Sanders, just remember, at the deadline, traded from the Broncos to the 49ers. I don't think the 49ers should regret letting him go or should regret that they even made the trade, because Sanders played a huge part in getting this team to the Super Bowl. It may not seem like it, because the credit will go to the defense, the credit will go to Kyle Shanahan's scheme, it'll go to George Kittle, but Sanders to me played a big part in that potential championship run that was ended by Kansas City. But to me, man, Emmanuel Sanders, great player. They got him on a steal, in my opinion. 2 years, $16 million to the New Orleans Saints. And yes, while Emmanuel Sanders does thrive in the slot, that doesn't mean Michael Thomas is just some stationary slot receiver. I'm sure they'll show different looks with both of these guys. The Saints offense got that much more dangerous. And what was the big concern with the Saints? Outside of Michael Thomas, who you got to throw it to? Well, unlike the Packers, the Saints have addressed that need by going to get Emmanuel Sanders. Big move, one of my favorite moves this offseason. Just keeping it real. And then here we are with the Seattle Seahawks. They did a lot of housekeeping as well, mainly bringing back Jarran Reed. They made a few signings, but I'm going to be honest. Seattle, I got nothing for you. And finally, to wrap it up, we got the Minnesota Vikings. Apparently, I'm biased. I'm a biased Packer fan. I'm supposed to, I really hate all of these teams. And, the Vikings happen to be on that list as well. But in all seriousness, they made one outside free agency signing, and I really like it a lot. And that is going to be defensive tackle Michael Pierce. Now, this Vikings team is going to look extremely different. Okay, here's Michael Pierce, by the way. Michael Pierce is a great player. He's going to come in, be that Linval Joseph replacement. Basically a younger Linval Joseph. 3 years, $27 million. I think it's a great contract for him. He's great against the run. He's going to provide a little interior pass rush. Not really, but that's something with surrounded by Danielle Hunter. You're going to be pretty good at that. But this Vikings team's going to look different. Of course, they don't have Xavier Rhodes. They traded Stephon Diggs. Everson Griffin's announced he's not coming back. Linval Joseph, of course, with the Chargers now. We talked about it in yesterday's video. This Vikings team is going to look a lot different. I think they'll be fine. They got a lot of draft picks. I think if they continue to draft defense and just find a way to make the offense better. If you can get another wide receiver for Kirk Cousins that isn't Stephon Diggs, who, obviously was just traded to the Bills. If you can find a way to get another receiver, I think you do it. You continue to draft young on defense, especially in the secondary. Maybe get another defensive end who can rush the passer, obviously, to pair up with Danielle Hunter. To me, the Vikings have had a rough offseason in the eyes of the fans, but for me, a Packer fan who, obviously, listen, as a fan of a team in the division, I'd like to think I know the division pretty well. Okay, 2 years ago, for the people who think I'm biased, 2 years ago I predicted the Vikings to win the division. And they did. Last year, I predicted Lions finish 4th, Bears finish 3rd, Vikings finish 2nd, and Green Bay finish 1st. What do you know? It played out that way. So how do I see it this year? You'll have to wait and see when it comes to that time. But I don't think the Vikings are going to win this division, but I also don't think they're fixing to fall off the face of the earth. I think they'll be just fine. Again, I think it just depends on the draft, and to me, that will determine a lot. But hopefully you guys enjoyed, man. The next video will be Mock Draft 3.0 with trades. Should be a lot of fun. Can't wait to see you guys there. Peace out.